Live from our studios in Kingstown, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. It's your favorite Thursday night show, Up Late with Sehon Marshall. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the host of tonight's show, Sehon Marshall.
And good night. Welcome to this another edition of Up Late with Sehon Marshall. It's Thursday, the 5th of February, 2026, and I'm so glad you've joined. Now, just for some assistance, I want you to let me know if you're hearing me. I had a little issue and I had to move out of my regular studio. So let's make sure that the sound is good. So if the sound is good, please give me some thumbs up so I know that the sound is good. All right. Give me some sound up. Give me some sound. Let me know the sound is good. All right. You there? I'm not seeing me yet for this new one. Now we go. Let's see. Make sure. All right. Sounds like the sound is good. All right. Sound is good. Sound is good. Sound is good. All right. So good night and welcome to this another edition of Uplift with Sehon Marshall. So happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to give you a few seconds as usual to share. So I'm going to be the first one to jump on my phone, get the link, and spread it all over social media. All right. So please, I encourage you to do the same. I know a lot of you who are in the program. Sometimes you forget now. You forget to do it. So I'm going to give you some time to do it quickly, and then we get on with our post. Yes, with our business. All right. Tune in now, and then you post, and we have our Up Late with Sehon Marshall posted. And you can do it as well on your Instagram, your WhatsApp, what have you. I'm going to my Instagram now to post it as well. Yes. Story. Bam, bam, bam. Link. And I'm posting this right here. Done. So it's there. I'm going to my WhatsApp for all of my fantastic contacts on WhatsApp. And I'm going to post that text right there so that they could all log on to YouTube and follow. So I've posted now on 5 different places. How many have you posted on? Don't tell me I'm faster than all you. And I have to be concentrating on a million things at once. All right. Let us do this. Honorable Brantley. Yep, I'm almost there. All right, wonderful. And we are cut off. All right, great. Now, you've been hearing me advertise tonight, so you know tonight we have an exciting program for you. We have with us, who'll be joining us, staying up late with us, the Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley. He's going to be here with us, chatting for, the duration of the show, talking a little bit about, well, specifically Nevis, some regional issues and so forth, and how our region can address some of the things that are impacting us. Many of those are exogenous, and maybe what's some ideas of the approaches we can take as a region. But let me do a few things. Let me thank you guys so much for the support that you've been giving Uplift with Sehon Marshall, having switched exclusively to YouTube away from Facebook. Over the past month or so, 5 weeks that we've switched exclusively to YouTube, the subscriptions have grown significantly. We've gone to almost 1,400 subscribers, and our watch hours continue to grow. Every week, hundreds of watch hours. And as I explained last week, this has enabled us to monetize. On the issue of monetizing, there is now specifically for those of you in the diaspora. I don't think it's available for St. Vincent and the Grenadines and some of our countries in this region. But if you live in the US and Canada and the UK, if you look at the YouTube channel, there's now a membership button. Yes, we are now offering membership to those individuals who would want to subscribe, who would want to join and become members of this Uplift with Sehon Marshall. It comes at a fee. It's $3 per month for the first day, and I think $7 for the second tier. But as time goes by, you would get to know more about the membership and what they involve and what perks you are able to get. But it's also a pretty decent way of supporting the program. If you want to support the program financially, this is your way of doing it. Right? So $3 a month, about $36 a year. If you do seven, it's $84 a year, spread over the entire year. So if you feel like you want to support the program and support the work that I've been doing, then here's your opportunity to do so. I welcome it all. And on that note, I must shout out my brother Kojo, Kojo in California. Yes? Kojo is our first member. From the time Kojo learned that the membership button was up, Kojo jumped on and activated his membership, and he is the first member of this group. Now, I have to big up Kojo because Kojo is one of the supporters of this program day in, day out, and he contributes financially as well. So I want to thank Kojo, I want to big up Kojo. And those of you in the diaspora who are so moved can also contribute by becoming members of Uplift with Sehon Marshall. Finally, before I jump into this thing, because we have a lot to talk about, I want to thank you also for the support that you've been giving me with the short commentary, Present Please. Listen, that started just as a response to the political heckling I was get, and I never thought that the support would have been as big as it has grown. People meet me in the street all the time. I'm telling you, literally every single day, and the way they approach me is present please. And so I know people are watching. And the numbers on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, really fantastic. These short commentaries, one of them has gotten over 20-something thousand views already, and I've been only doing it for 2 weeks. So the support that you've been giving to both Uplift with Sehon Marshall and for the short commentary Present Please has been phenomenal. I want to thank you. I want to really encourage you to continue to support, because listen, we need our voices to be heard, and it doesn't matter how many individuals would love us to shut up, it ain't gonna happen. All right, good. Let's get that out of the way. Now, as I promised you, the Premier of Nevis, Mark Brantley, is here with us. And I was drawn to inviting the Honorable Premier because I was scrolling through LinkedIn one day, and I saw an interesting post that the Honorable Premier made. And I reached out to him, and without hesitation, the Premier responded. I told him what I wanted, and he accepted my invitation immediately. And so I really appreciate that. So we're going to chat a little bit about some issues, but I want to read the post from the Premier as a backdrop, and then we'll welcome the Premier into the studios of Uplift with Sehon Marshall. It goes: the Caribbean's opportunity for a brain gain. The Caribbean's opportunity for a brain gain. Recent news from our friends and neighbor, the United States of America, reinforces the new approach to immigration, not just in the United States, but across the developed world. Each morning, we in the Caribbean wake to more breaking news. Yesterday, it was small states being forced to accept deportees from third countries. Today, it is that immigrant visa processing for some Caribbean states have been suspended by the U.S. At each announcement, the people of the Caribbean, one second, I was supposed to do this. At each announcement, my apologies. At each announcement, the people of the Caribbean howl in dismay and blame their leaders. Regional leadership wrings its hands with cries of, "Woe is me," and the usual statement is issued that we are engaging diplomatically to resolve issues. A certain level of hysteria is setting in almost all as if, a certain level of hysteria is setting in almost as if Caribbean people think themselves stateless and homeless. The truth, though, is that far too long, developed countries around the world have benefited from migration of the best and brightest minds from the Caribbean. This brain drain has contributed to the advancement of those countries whilst simultaneously depriving the Caribbean of the contribution that such persons could have made to our regional development. So I'm here to propose a different regional approach. Do not be dismayed by the new immigration policies of the United States and others. Every country has the right to set its own immigration policy. America is doing what it deems to be in the best interest of America. The Caribbean should embrace the opportunities that this new approach presents for our region. We should reorient our thinking as a region and as a people and start to look for opportunities within the Caribbean, Latin America, or motherland Africa, and the global south. Send out a call for those in our vast diaspora to come back home to lend their talents to Caribbean development. Let the message resonate from the shores of Miami to the mountains of New York that the Caribbean is calling its people to come home. Make land available and develop a range of fiscal incentives to encourage our people to return home. In Nevis, for example, we offered returning university graduate land for $1 per square foot. Tell our people, when you're coming, bring your wealth with you, bring your ideas with you, bring your entrepreneurial spirit with you, bring your training with you, bring your education, insights, and innovation with you. Sell your home in Brooklyn and buy a home in Bridgetown. Sell your shares in the New York stock market and buy shares in the Caribbean Stock Exchange. Transfer your bank accounts from Bank of New York to Bank of Nevis or Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Create greater opportunities for intra-regional migration, business establishment, investment, and travel. Miami is fabulous, but so too are Castries and Kingston. Let this crisis become an opportunity to shift our generational brain drain into a brain gain. Let us not become unwanted guests in foreign land. It is time for people to come home. And with that, we welcome in the studios of Uplift with Sehon Marshall, the Honorable Mark Brantley. Premier, good evening and thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Good evening, my brother, and thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you and your audience.
1 second. I'm not hearing you.
You're not hearing me?
I'm not hearing you.
I'm hearing you very clearly.
I am not hearing you. Let's try it again, Premier.
Can you hear me now?
You know,
I,
I should be hearing you like that. I don't want to be hearing you like that. I don't
I,
want because that
I am
might.
hearing you very clearly.
I am hearing you, but it is coming. It is not coming through my headphones. Unfortunately,
Ah,
I don't know. Oh yes, now it's coming to my headphones.
now
Thank
you
you.
can
All
hear me.
right. Yes, loud and
Okay,
clear.
fantastic.
All right. So again, welcome to the program. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for accepting the invitation.
Sure.
Now, Premier, as an introduction, St. Kitts Nevis is a federation, and for the benefit of our viewers who may not understand the dynamics of what a federation is, give a brief overview of what that means because we know St. Kitts as a prime minister, but here you are as the premier of Nevis, which is part of St. Kitts and Nevis. So please give us an overview of how that works.
So I think we're probably better described as a sort of pseudo federal construct. We refer to it as a federation, but we are not the traditional federal structure. So St. Kitts and Nevis would have attained its independence in 1983 from England, and that independence constitution created the nation referred to as the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, but it created a unique situation where the Nevis Island, the island of Nevis, has a Nevis Island administration headed by a premier that runs the island of Nevis. And it also has a Nevis Island Assembly, a lawmaking body on the island of Nevis with extensive legislative powers. In fact, the federal government or the national government based in Bastille, which is headed by a prime minister, really only is responsible in Nevis for certain matters such as defense, security, international representation. But if you were in Nevis and you're traveling on the roads, you want your garbage collected, you want water, you want electricity, you want development of any kind on the island, investment, that is all the responsibility of me and my government on the island of Nevis. So it's an unusual structure because St. Kitts does not have an island government. So that's what makes it unusual. So St. Kitts essentially the federal government, the national government functions as the government of St. Kitts, having certain responsibilities for the island of Nevis, but the island of Nevis has a full-fledged internal governance structure. So we have permanent secretaries, we have ministries in Nevis, we have ministers, and the other curiosity, I suppose, is that we also have two elections. So the island of Nevis has island elections to elect a premier and a government at the local level. And then we also participate in national elections to elect a prime minister at the national level. So it's quite, I often say to people that I'm surprised that the University of the West Indies and others haven't had more scholars study the very unique constitutional construct that is St. Kitts and Nevis. We, of course, have many multi-party, multi-island states in the region. St. Vincent and
Yes,
the Grenadines,
and the
Antigua
Grenadines,
and
of
Barbuda,
course.
Trinidad, Tobago, but none are like St. Kitts and Nevis. It's a very unusual construct.
And that's why I thought it important for you to give that overview.
Mhm.
As we talk a little bit about you, Premier, you've been in politics for quite a number of years. You've been first elected in 2007 to the Federal Assembly. How has that journey been for you?
It has been equal parts challenge and equal parts rewarding. I'm a lawyer by profession, and as I love to say publicly, I took a vow of poverty and entered politics. So I've been here ever since, and it is rewarding in terms of the public service. It's rewarding in terms of being able to shape policy and to be there long enough to see those policies take root and bear fruit. It is challenging because our politics can be very divisive at times, and oftentimes instead of a really a substantive issue, a substantive discussion of issues, we instead engage in the usual mudslinging and that which really doesn't advance the country in any way, shape, or form. So I have been advocating for some time now for a higher standard of public discourse. I'm not sure I'm succeeding in my goals in that regard, but certainly I continue to advocate that we are an intelligent people. In fact, St. Kitts and Nevis boasts a literacy rate of nearly 100%, and it has been that way for many decades. We were one of the first Caribbean countries to introduce mandatory secondary education. We did that in the 1970s. So the country is a highly literate, highly educated country. But sometimes I fear that what passes as political debate is just not acceptable, and it's not up to the level that we could have. I do believe that we do ourselves a disservice sometimes. But those challenges aside, I found the journey rewarding. The people that I've helped, the lives that I've touched, the policies. I give you just a very brief example. Recently, we introduced a policy where we would assist single parents who were struggling with daycare. And so we created a program where the government would pay for daycare for them. And the relief that gave so many, it's just fantastic to behold. I see young people now who we would have, arranged for them to get scholarships to go and do a university degree. And when you reflect that perhaps they, like me, come from a poor family and would not otherwise have been able to afford tertiary education. And you now see them, they have their bachelor's, they have their master's degrees, they're doing well. It really gives me tremendous satisfaction to see that. I mean, politics at the end of the day is about people. And if you can do good things for people, as I say, we do the best we can for as long as we can. And then we move on and allow the next generation to do what they can do. So I'm fairly satisfied that in my 2 decades in politics, I've done my best. And that's all that one can ask of anybody, is that they do their best. And I continue to try. I'm a little, uh, my beard is a bit gray now, but I continue to have enough in me that I get up every morning, I put my shoes on, and I go to work and I try my best for the people of Nevis.
Let me just say this, Premier, as an attorney who's just getting started, and as someone who also has interest in politics. I'm not sure you've motivated me with the poverty part, but that's another story.
It's an important mindset shift because, truth be told, politicians, despite what is said and what is widely believed by the Caribbean populace, politicians don't really make very much money at all.
Correct, correct,
And
correct, correct.
the demands on politicians are overwhelming. They're
Yeah.
truly overwhelming. So I think that if anybody's coming to politics looking to get rich, then they're not coming to politics with the right attitude, and they're likely to get themselves into problems. So I think that you come to politics, understand that you're coming to do public service, and that's what it's about, and that I think is the right mindset.
What do you see as some of the challenges, the unique challenges you've advocated? That post I read spoke specifically to migration, but I followed you. You've just returned from a mission overseas in Europe where you engage with high level individuals, both from the private sector and so forth. What do you see as some of the major challenges of a small island like Nevis? And I guess that question could be used to speak to many of the islands in CARICOM. But what do you see as some of your unique challenges?
I think we have challenges in terms of simply resources. We are financially challenged. That's always the situation because our people, notwithstanding our size, have first world appetites. Our people are saying to us, listen, I want healthcare at the standard that I would get in New York or I would get in Boston or London. And I, I think our populace is that is sympathetic to the suggestion that, listen, sometimes we're simply not in a position to provide certain services at that level because we just simply do not have the resources. I think we also have the constraint of a human resource constraint. A lot of times we simply do not have the capacity in terms of people who are trained and available to us. Nevis, remember, is only 13,500 people. I mean, Nevis is a hamlet in most places. It's a little smaller than most villages. And so we are having to develop an island with a very, very tiny population, a slender tax base, where our people's appetites for quality roads and infrastructure and water and electricity and healthcare and education are first world appetites. So there are challenges to be sure, but I think that we've made tremendous progress over the years. I'm not sure if you've ever been to Nevis. If you haven't, I would invite you and your listeners and your viewers to certainly pay us a visit. I think we are an incredibly, incredibly beautiful space. But also, I think what we've been able to do here with the limited resources available to us in terms of our development. It has been said, I think, with some degree of accuracy, that we have some of the best roads in the region. We've invested significantly in water infrastructure, in electricity infrastructure. We've invested significantly in healthcare and in education. And I think that we've done very well thus far in meeting some of our sustainable goal agendas. That sustainable goal agenda that has been set for us, that by 2030, I think
By
we're
2030. Yeah.
very much well on the way to achieving a lot of those. And so we're doing some interesting things on the island of Nevis. We have our geothermal exploration, which is well on the way this year. We are, as you just mentioned, I was in Europe because I was there promoting a brand new industry that we just started, which is online gaming, where we're trying to diversify our existing offerings. We have a thriving financial services sector. Many don't know, but Nevis has been in the financial services space now for over 40 years. And so the island has, I think, the necessary ingredients. I keep saying that all we need to do is to bring them together and bake the cake. So we're definitely involved in progressing this island in a positive way, inviting people to come and help us to develop. And the piece that you read was really my appeal to our diaspora, not only for Nevis, but for the region. Some of our best and brightest minds, some of our most successful individuals are contributing to the development of other countries. And as the hostility in some countries in the global north continues to grow, I think it's a wake up call for us. And I'm hopeful that from my little vantage point here in Nevis, that other leaders in the region will hear that call. They will see some value in it. I noticed that my brother Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, has made specific reference to the piece that you just read and said that Antigua and Barbuda will be seeking to drive traffic the other way. And we have to recognize that in all of these Caribbean countries, the story has been quite similar, that our people have been a migrant people and that our best and our brightest have traditionally left the region and many never to return. I'm sure that you might have had that experience. I certainly do. That many whom we went to school with, they went away for
Yeah. Yeah.
university, and we've never seen them again
And never came back.
because they've been hired. They make their lives out there, and I think America, Canada, the United Kingdom, and others, they understand talent. They see talent and they grab it. And so our minds, bright minds that go out there, young minds full of vim, vigor, and vitality, they're offered monies and wages sometimes that we can't afford in the region, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to make my life here in New York." The thing for me now, though, is for us to reset in terms of our thinking, for us to start to recognize that the outer world is becoming increasingly hostile. When we look at Europe, when we look at the United States, we look at other countries, which traditionally have been our partners, we see a rise of what I would call the right and even perhaps some may say
Yes.
far right. The far right is
Well,
anti-immigration.
well,
Yes.
as you're speaking, if I may,
Sure.
because that's one of the questions I have. So maybe I should just
Okay.
ask it because you've gone there. One of the questions I have for you has to do with with the rise of the far right in
Hmm.
Europe and with what I consider a far right government in the US. The question is, what are some of the ways? What are some of the ways do you see the policies of those far right governments and the rise of those far right parties driving certain narratives in the UK? You have reform and so forth.
Hmm.
How do you see that impacting immigration, both in terms of our nationals being able to go and, like you mentioned, the hostility that our nationals what they are facing? How is that impacting our islands?
Well, I think it's a confluence of circumstances. The domestic politics now in most of those countries is trending towards the right. It's interesting you mentioned Reform UK because they now seem to be the major challenger to the Labour Party, not the Conservatives,
To
but
labor, yes,
Reform. And
yes.
so and so, UKIP is out there and they're saying certain things, and they look, frankly, Nigel Farage looks like he has a pathway to the number 10. And so you look at those issues emerging in the UK, and England has traditionally, as our old mother colony, been an area that has received Caribbean people. The whole Windrush generation went in the 50s and 60s and later in the 70s, perhaps, to rebuild England and to many of us and many of our people have found lives and made lives for themselves and their families in the UK. But I think as we look across the landscape, we are going to see a tightening of immigration policies. We are going to see, dare I say, that people who look like you and I will be less welcome. And perhaps these are uncomfortable truths, but I think that there is some element to the far right which doesn't see that there's value in us and what we bring to the table. And I feel that, as I said, we ought not, as Caribbean people, to become unwanted guests in a foreign land. We have beautiful landscapes in the region, we have beautiful countries in the region. And I have been a little perturbed when I speak to some Caribbean people because I've coined a phrase where I say that I suspect that some are allergic to the Caribbean because the excuses, in my opinion, that they give for not contributing, not getting involved. I've had recent discussions with some as I encourage people to come home. And when I say come home, let me explain what I mean because I recognize that not everybody can simply uproot themselves and come back to St. Vincent or come back to
Right.
Grenada. When I say come home in part, I am referring to those who can physically, yes, to come, but also for those who are there to invest, to get involved in what we're doing in the Caribbean. I find that there are many of us who have turned our backs because we have gone abroad and that is now our life. Many of us identifying as American or Canadian, as the case may be, and less so as Caribbean people, particularly those who have now been born out there, second and third generations. And many are losing contact with the region that really ought to give us that grounding as a Caribbean people. I am, and I've heard the phrase said Originally, I heard it said by the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Gonzalez, about a Caribbean civilization. I believe very strongly that we do have something in the region that we ought to work towards building and developing. But to do so, we need a reorientation in terms of our people and their thinking. We need to reorient that thinking away from the notion that everything foreign is better. And in conversation that I've had recently, because that piece has sparked a lot of debate, and
I could imagine.
I hear Caribbean people saying to me, "Oh, I can't come home because your healthcare system isn't up to scratch. I can't come home
I've
because,
heard that.
yes, because your government doesn't work as efficiently." And I smile to myself because I recall that my father, of blessed memory, was part of that Windrush generation. And I want Caribbean people to reflect that thousands, in fact, tens of thousands of us went to England, and most people did not even know what winter was like. We had no concept. This wasn't a time when you could go on Google and find out what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. People got on ships
Right.
and sailed thousands of miles to a distant shore, not knowing what to expect. My father shared with me that when he settled at the time in Manchester, in England, he said there were signs in the doors which said flat for let, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And so not even housing
Wow.
our people could get in England in those days. And yet our people kept going. Some of our people went, dare I say, to worse conditions in those countries than they left at home. But we kept going. And there was always a sense that if you were in foreign, that it was better than if you were at home. I think we need to work on changing that mindset. And I think that some of our people who are currently abroad, it must be of some interest. Let me try to use a neutral term. That some people of Caribbean descent and of our Caribbean civilization prefer to live illegally in a foreign country than to live in their own countries. What does that say? Now, some may look at it and say, oh, it's a lack of opportunity. But Caribbean people have always created opportunity. We went up, and many of us, not that we were educated or we worked hard. My father, for example, I go back to him, he had no education, but he insisted that all of his children must get an education. And so we have been able to create, and that's the genius of the Caribbean person, the ability to create something out of nothing. And I'm sending out that call to our Caribbean people. And I'm saying, listen, the Caribbean needs you now. And if those adopted lands are now saying that you're somehow less desirable, they don't want you anymore, do not allow anybody to suggest that you do not have a home, because you do. St. Vincent will welcome you, Jamaica will welcome you, Grenada will welcome you, Little Nevis will welcome you. We want our people to start to take that type of approach and to aid us and assist us in our development. So instead of telling us that our healthcare system is not up to snuff, come and help us build it. Because some who are making those comments are in America helping America build its healthcare system and improve its healthcare system.
Absolutely.
They're
Absolutely.
in England helping England and the what is it called, the NHS, build out the NHS.
NHS, yes.
And I am saying to our people the same way that we can assist foreign countries in their development and to give them first world status and developed status, so too we can lend our skills. And in today's world, it is not as hard, as it perhaps it used to be, because now with technology, we can contribute. You and I are having a conversation right now live. I am in Nevis. I'm not even sure where you are, but we are having that conversation, and that's the power of technology. So, those who are genuinely
Yes.
interested in engaging and in helping and in, if you will, assisting the development of our region, I think that it can happen. And frankly, if only 10%, if only 5% of our people were to respond to this call, I still feel that it would be a useful start to a reimagination of development in our region and a move away from our dependence on foreign assistance and foreign talent to say to our people, listen, You can come home. You may not make as much money, but your quality of life would be better. You may complain about this or complain about that, but the reality is there is no place, and I've been afforded the privilege now of traveling to most places in the world. There's no place like the Caribbean. None. That is why even in the tourism sector, we're still the Rolls Royce of the tourism industry. I think it's unfortunate sometimes, my brother, that the Caribbean people don't recognize what we have. We allow other people to come to the region. I saw a parody the other
Recognize it.
day. I saw a parody the other that I'm going to share with you because I thought it was so telling. This young man said that he used to be in Grenada, from Grenada, and he said he used to go to the beach. He lived in a little shack, little wooden house close to the beach. And he used to go to the beach every morning. He would go catch fish. He would, catch crabs, go and catch a lobster, whatever he did to survive. He said he was told that he was poor and he was destitute and that he had to better his circumstances. And so he said he moved heaven and earth to get to America. He's now living in America. He's taking 2 and 3 trains to get to work every day in the winter. He's struggling with the cold. In the summer, he's struggling with the heat. He's working as hard as he can, paying taxes at 40% of what he earns. And he said, the irony is, the person he's working for has gone to Grenada and bought the same wooden shack on the beach where he grew up. I say that to say that
Wow.
the life that we are somehow running away from, there are others who are doing everything in their power to get that life. And I think we must look at the lesson in that we are being told that we are poor and destitute and things are so hard that we must escape that by going to lend our talents elsewhere. And people from those countries are trying their best to acquire that very real estate that you abandoned on the beach so that they too can get fresh fish, fresh lobster, and crabs and live the Caribbean life. It will not appeal to everybody, I get that. But I do think that we need to start to think of our region differently and think about development differently. And I think governments have a role to play because governments can put in place certain incentives and a certain framework to allow those abroad to come back and to invest and to play a part. And so in Nevis, for example, in January of last year, we published a whole new policy which sets out a raft of concessions for people who want to come in, bring in their car, bring in their furniture, get everything duty free, come in and build a home, you get your materials duty free, because we're saying we want you to come back. We've set up an office, which is a one stop shop for anybody in the diaspora who wants to come home. And we're putting things in place to ensure that there's a seamless transition for them. We're saying to people, even if you're not yet ready, maybe you haven't reached retirement, or maybe the other things you want to accomplish wherever your adopted home is, you can still invest here in the meantime. Build something, have it an Airbnb, whatever the situation may be, but invest something back in the region. And that is why I said they need to move that bank account from the Bank of New York to the Bank of Nevis. You say you want it in the Bank of St. Vincent. That's okay too. But invest in the region. There is, I think, a lot of wealth out there in Caribbean hands, a lot of talent out there among Caribbean people. We have to find a way to harness it. And, so many times we're talking about foreign investment, foreign investment. You ever hear us talking about local people investing or our diaspora investing?
Yes, poor people. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
really need,
That
I
needs to be
think,
focused.
to change the dialogue, change the approach, change the orientation, and say to our people that there are opportunities. When I say Caribbean, I am not just saying that there should be opportunities in Jamaica for Jamaicans, although that is important. I think the Caribbean should see itself as a single space. And so if you are from St. Vincent and there's an opportunity in St. Kitts, that opportunity should be available to you. Equally, if you're from Antigua and there's an opportunity in Jamaica, that opportunity should be available to you. By doing so, we have a much wider scope for our people to lend their talents to the region. So I think we need to see it as a collective rather than as individual islands.
So let's add on to that the idea of the collective, because your article does speak to what you just raised, that Vincentian can see an opportunity in Nevis.
Mhm.
You served in the Team Unity government as the Minister of Foreign Affairs
Yes.
of the Federation.
Yes.
Do you see the need for CARICOM to have a more harmonious approach towards some of these things, so that, for example, this issue of migration is tackled in a unified manner. The issue of things like climate change tackled in a unified manner. What are your thoughts on CARICOM's readiness and willingness to start addressing issues in a coordinated, unified manner, in the same way that the EU does, for example, with their High Representative for Foreign Affairs? I find we are easily plucked off one by one, and our varying interests gets in the way. But I think that there has come a time for us to address these issues together. As someone who's been a part of the diplomatic corps, the head diplomat of your region, and coordinate with CARICOM, what do you think is our level of readiness in that regard to address some of these issues, migration, visas, and so forth, in a coordinated, unified manner?
I think we're ready. There's a separate question that is whether or not we're willing. We're ready in the sense that we have the capacity. I have great confidence in those who are at CARICOM. I have, as foreign minister, worked with many people within that organization, and it has some of the best and brightest in our region. Whether or not we're willing to engage in the way that you've described is a different matter. And I think that's what now requires political will. There is in the region, unfortunately, a tendency for some of us, when we're doing well or we think we're doing well, to say we don't need the rest of us. Um, the Caribbean is replete with examples of that. You may recall that there was something called the West Indies Federation. And the West Indies Federation, I think, broke up because Jamaica felt that somehow it was being called upon to contribute to the development of these smaller islands. I recall a story being told of, I think it was Bustamante in Jamaica leading a sow with 9 piglets and saying that the sow represented Jamaica and the rest of us were sucking on Jamaica. Jamaica at the time, of course, had bauxite and was doing well. When Jamaica pulled away, I think it was Prime Minister Eric Williams of, well, who later became Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and made the famous statement that 1 from 10 leaves not. And so we then went on with a little eight with Barbados and the rest of us. That didn't last. And one by one, we became independent. Nothing is wrong with that. Sovereignty is what it is. Every country wants its sovereignty. That's okay. But the region is really replete with examples of us not being able to stay the course, us not being able to continue on the path of unity within the region, as a CARICOM region, as a Caribbean region, as a Caribbean people, as a Caribbean civilization. And I think that it is time now that we accept that we do need each other. This picking off that you've spoken about, I see it happening. I mean, look at the situation with Venezuela, Trinidad, the shouting that was happening across the Caribbean Sea, the insults that were being hurled. One Caribbean leader saying something, another Caribbean leader saying something else. Who's the beneficiary of that? It's certainly not the Caribbean people. And that is why I think that, Article 6, I think it is, of the treaty that establishes CARICOM, does call for coordination of foreign policy. And we ought to have the capacity within the region to say, when big powers, superpowers, call on us as individual nations to do something, for us to defer and say, this is a matter for CARICOM. We refer those matters to CARICOM. We say that we have a commitment to coordinate policy, coordinate approaches, and therefore we want a CARICOM position. Now, don't get me wrong. We're in a world of global politics, and the truth is that superpowers are called superpowers for a reason. We are called small nations for a reason. We are small. We don't have any military might. We don't have any economic might. But what we do have, I think, is through a coordinated effort, we will say to the world that when you engage with the Caribbean, understand that you're not just engaging with St. Vincent, you're not just engaging with St. Kitts and Nevis, you're engaging with us as a region. And I feel as a region, as a third border to the United States of America, we have not nearly flexed sufficient muscle, in my view. We are an important region. We are important, for example, to the national security of the United States. When you look at the war on drugs, where has that war been waged? It's been waged in the Caribbean Sea. And we as a region have the capacity. I have no doubt about our capacity. Caribbean people have an incredible, incredible reservoir of intellectual capacity exists in our region. So I am no doubt in my mind that we have the capacity. What we have lacked, I think, is the will. And that, I think, is coming back now to the politics. And what do we need to do? Why, for example, did we allow the Venezuela situation to deteriorate to the point that it got to? When we had levers, we had mechanisms that were available to us. We have members of the OAS, we are members of CELAC. As CARICOM, we have access to the capitals, whether it's Caracas or Washington, D.C. The reality was that we had certain levers. We had the Montevideo mechanism. I was foreign minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. My then prime minister was the chair of CARICOM. We journeyed to Uruguay, and Uruguay, Mexico, and CARICOM signed on to a mechanism called the Montevideo mechanism in 2019, which set out a pathway to try to resolve the situation in Venezuela. Of course, COVID intervened, but still, we had fashioned something from us, created by us, to try and solve that problem. We did nothing about it. And the result was that a superpower came into the region and did what superpowers do, exercise military might. Now, that sets a particular precedent. Are we comfortable with that precedent? And so here's where I think speaking with one voice, engaging with one voice is so important, whether it's on the issue of immigration, climate change, as you've described. I think we've done an excellent job on climate change. But whatever the issue is, the Caribbean region needs to understand that going it alone as individual countries is a recipe for disaster. And doing it together and looking to see how we can cooperate and how we can work together is of greater value to the Caribbean people than trying to do it alone. It's not about who gets invited to the White House. It's not about who is at Mar-a-Lago. It is important that we understand as a people that we must have that level of respect in the world where people look to us and they say they may be small, but they're together. You can't just pick off one of the Caribbean countries. That's not how they operate there. And the world now understands when we stand at the UN, when we stand at various multilateral fora in the world, that we're engaging as a unit, we're engaging as a region. And I think that that is important for us. We see others trying. You mentioned the EU, we see Africa as well, so the African Union. In fact, I've been a strong advocate during my time as foreign minister that we needed to do more, CARICOM and the African Union, because together, 14 or so countries in CARICOM, 50, 52 or whatever it is in the African Union, together, we were one third of the countries in the world. And that would be an unstoppable diplomatic force if we were to be able to coordinate and, as we say here locally, sing from the same hymn book, sing from the same pew, and sing the same
Some
hymn.
sweet.
Right? It is very important that we do that.
Now, when we talk about the current situation regarding immigration, one of the things that jumps out at me is the matter of the Citizen by Investment Program, CBI, CIP, however it is abbreviated. Recently, in his budget address, the Prime Minister of your Federation remarked that the Citizen by Investment Program is a very risky venture. Now, I have two questions. I'm going to ask you the first one, and then I'm going to follow up on that. But do you first of all, agree with the assessment from Prime Minister Drew that the CIP or CBI is a very risky venture for vulnerable economies and creates vulnerabilities for economies?
I don't know that the citizenship by investment program is inherently risky. I think the way the program is managed, is what creates the risks. The Singus Nevis gave the world the idea of citizenship by investment. We had the very first program in the world. The idea emanated from Singus Nevis. That idea was born in 1984. 1984 till now is 42 years. It means, therefore, that for nearly the entire period of our independence, we've had a citizenship by investment program. Other programs have come. Grenada has come, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua, and Barbuda. We've seen Malta and Cyprus. We've seen now President Trump announcing a variation of the same program, same idea. Canada has had. That's how Canada attracted so many Hong Kong Chinese to Vancouver and places like those. The UK has had its golden visa. It's pretty much the same principle that has been applied in different ways, at different price points perhaps, but it is leveraging your sovereignty. It is saying that in exchange for investment, I give you residency, I give you citizenship, as the case may be. Those programs exist now globally. St. Kitts Nevis pioneered that. It is one of, when I go back to the intellectual capacity in the region, we gave the world that particular idea. The fact that it has lasted for 42 years, nearly the entire period of our independence, tells me that it is not that the program is inherently risky, it's rather how the program is managed. And I think that if we were to manage these programs in an open and transparent way, where information is available, where our vetting process is clear, where, for example, we publish the details of who has been granted our citizenship, we publish the numbers, we publish the revenue. So much in these programs is still hidden that I think it engenders suspicion, and that has been the difficulty that we faced. But the citizenship by investment programs are inextricably linked to the rise of the anti-immigrant sentiment that we're seeing elsewhere. What do I mean by that? We have visa-free access to some countries, including most of Western Europe, the Schengen areas they call it. That has come under tremendous pressure. Why? Because the domestic politics in those countries is saying, we don't want people to come in here through some kind of back door. We want to be able to control that. It is echoes of the same sentiment in relation to immigration that we're seeing as the far right rises in the global north. And so I think that these programs are going to continue to be relevant, but I think their relevance will be significantly less than it used to be. Now, why do I say that? I
Now, if I
think,
may follow up on,
Mhm.
I want to follow up on
Sure.
that because St. Vincent and Grenadines just had elections about 2 months ago, and we had a new government, a government that had always favored the Citizen by Investment program. As you just mentioned, you suspect that it will become less relevant.
Yes.
Do you see any real sustainable benefits for a late entrant like St. Vincent and Grenadines from a program like this that is currently under so much pressure to make it a viable option of revenue?
I obviously would not wish to engage myself in the internal politics of St. Vincent and the Grenadines because I understand that this has been,
Without
yes,
engaging
yes.
in the
But
internal
I understand it's a
politics.
campaign commitment that the new government has made, and so certainly it would be for them
Yes.
to make that determination. So, what I would say is from a sort of broader policy perspective, that when we look at the pressures that are being exerted on these programs in the Caribbean in particular, we look at what Europe is saying, we look at what the US and others have been saying, that the world is less receptive to these types of programs. And so if St. Vincent is now getting involved, then they would have to have a very special offering, if you will, with special controls if that program is going to work. I think the days when these programs, and to put it in context for you, in the heyday here in St. Kitts Nevis, the Citizenship by Investment program was bringing in almost $700 million per year. For a small nation like us, that's a significant sum. In fact, the Citizenship by Investment program was accounting for 55% of the national budget. So we have seen a precipitous drop in those numbers, not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, but around the region. So it suggests that the programs are under pressure. The programs have become less popular, perhaps because of tightening controls. We are being forced now to introduce certain requirements that people must be resident for some period of time. And so the attractiveness of those programs, I think, is on the wane. Now, what does that say in terms of a broader context for our region, sub-region in particular? It says that we must, with some alacrity, move to diversify our economies. Because even though we had late entrance into that market like St. Lucia and Antigua and Grenada, Dominica, those programs have had an outsized impact on those countries' budgets as well. And so if it is, as I predict, that CBI is going to continue to wane, then we must find with a certain alacrity alternatives to citizenship by investment. You cannot replace 55% of a budget overnight. You have to be able to put certain things in place so that you have other levers to the economy and are able to grow the economy at pace to make up, if you will, for the shortfall. So I wish St. Vincent all the best. I feel that if they can design a program that is attractive and that is somehow unique, but I fear that what I'm seeing in terms of the international landscape is a level of hostility to these programs. And it is the age old sense of keeping us underdeveloped. And I say so because, and I've said so directly to some diplomats I've engaged with from Europe and elsewhere. I said, we had bananas, they killed that. We had, you know, citizenship by investment, they're trying to kill that. The immigration provided, if you will, a release, a pressure release valve, and our people were able to go and make a life and send back remittances. That's being choked off. And I think the collective
They
message,
did the same thing with financial services as well, offshore
financial
financial
services,
services. They kill it out as well.
Antigua had a very important gaming sector. All of that was choked off. And I think that the collective message from all of that is that Caribbean must now look inward. The Caribbean must look towards the Caribbean and say, what can we as Caribbean people do for our survival and our advancement? The outside world is becoming more hostile, not less so. My prediction is certainly in the short to medium term, it's going to get worse because I see now countries are going to be spending more of their budgets on defense, and where those budgets are going to suffer is in relation to overseas direct assistance and you know investment in these countries. I see certain programs. The United States has already abandoned USAID as the way we know it. They are
USA, yeah.
now, yeah,
Yep,
they're
yeah.
now, you know, extricating themselves from certain world organizations. I think I saw something saying the World Health Organization. They're saying that they're likely to abandon that. The world is going to be a different place because I think most of those major countries are becoming more insular and they're looking inward. And I don't argue with them. I don't think anybody owes us anything. We are sovereign nations and we must find a way. And so every country must organize themselves for the benefit of their people. I think the Caribbean needs to lean on each other. We need to work together. We need to put aside some of the things that we use to divide us. And the Caribbean Sea should not be seen as a divider, but rather as a uniter, that it brings us together rather than it dividing us as a people. We must come to grips with the new realities of the world. And the new realities of the world say that whilst we will not abandon old friends in the global north, we must try to find new friends. And I have advocated for a long time that we look to the global south, that we start to look to Africa, we start to look to the Middle East and Asia, and we start to develop new relationships. And I'll give you an example. When I was foreign minister, I signed diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Traditionally, the Saudis have not had much involvement in the Caribbean. Do you know, less than 5 years later, the Saudis have now offered 20 million US dollars for the geothermal development on Nevis, where many of our long standing partners, the only thing they were able to offer us is technical assistance. The
Yeah,
Saudis
yeah,
were prepared to write a check for 20 million US dollars to assist us. There is value in maintaining close relationships that we have, but also in exploring new relationships. And I think the Caribbean, in terms of our diplomacy, we have not been as fleet of foot as I would like to see in going to Africa and engaging. We should have embassies all over Africa. We should be engaging as a region with Africa. And I think that it's important for Caribbean people, again, to start to reorient their thinking. I was in Panama recently, and I'm telling you, I was amazed at what Panama had to offer in terms of shopping, nightlife, restaurants. And I said, but save for the language. Of course, I speak Spanish there. There was not much difference, in my opinion, between Panama and Miami. But some may argue Miami, they speak Spanish too. But the reality is that there wasn't a fundamental difference. And I said, well, listen, I was able to go to Panama without a visa, without. Why is it we are not trying to develop those kinds of links? Panama from St. Martin is what, 2 hours or something?
finally.
So I think that we just need to start to think differently in our region. Yes.
Finally, we over time, but I want to ask you this final question because your piece did speak to uh, intra-regional migration. With the demise of Liat, there has not been an airline that has come to the fore to take up the strain that Liat did. And we know these challenges that Liat had, where a number of regional governments didn't contribute to its operations. How do you see us dealing with, promoting rather, this idea of interregional migration and interregional travel, interregional tourism, without a viable carrier? I would love to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. I've been there once to St. Kitts. Now I'd love to travel to Nevis. But I'm wary when I think of how am I going to get there? It's going to take
Mhm.
me 3 days to get
Right.
to St. Kitts just up the road. How do you see us addressing the issue of interregional migration, interregional travel, something that we can use to subsidize the tourism from the source markets and help us to build our economies?
One of the ironies of Caribbean life and times is that when Caribbean governments were refusing to support Liat, they were paying subsidies to American Airlines and JetBlue and those carriers to come to our shores. They were giving them minimum revenue guarantees. And that has really always been our dilemma. It comes back to what I say in terms of how we think. I feel that there can be no movement in the Caribbean, and all that I'm preaching about people coming back and creating a single space is meaningless without proper transport. So we need to go back to the drawing board and develop a model, whether that is a revival of Liat or it is to take, say, Cal and to expand Cal, find a way. But it is not, again, beyond us. But we have to be committed to it, and all of us have to play our part in saying, listen, regional travel is important. I had a meeting in Nevis recently with some representatives coming from Barbados. And would you know they flew to Miami and then back to St. Kitts in order to get to me? That is, it's really unconscionable. But we have to be able to make that a reality by paying attention and by trying to do our very best to bring our minds to bear to see how we can do this and do it together. And so I agree with you that we need more transportation within the region because the Caribbean construct, the Caribbean experiment cannot work unless we can go and visit each other, go and see each other, go and live in each other's countries and go and contribute. It looks like I've lost you, I think. Hi,
I think
can you hear me?
I think I lost you a while
Yeah,
ago.
your thing said no connection. I don't know what happened. So,
I'm not sure what happened there either. So I apologize for that. But please, you were making the point about the interesting conversation you were having regarding the traveling, the
yeah,
airline.
I simply feel, as I said, that what we're trying to do in the Caribbean will not work absent transportation links. So it has to be an urgent priority to get something in place to get us from one place to the next, whether that's by air or by sea. For goods and services, you name it, we have to be able to trade, we have to be able to travel. And I was recounting that I had a situation recently with a meeting in Nevis where people had to leave Barbados and fly to Miami and then come back to
Wow.
St. Kitts.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And so we need to find a way and put our resources together and really invest in regional transportation because it's important. And I think, for a long time, people criticize LIAT. They say, you don't miss the water until the well runs dry.
Till the word is right. Absolutely.
Because with all the criticisms of
Absolutely.
LIAT, everybody now would love if LIAT was still the LIAT of old. So
I'm sure. Yes.
but the reality is that we need to treat regional transportation, in my opinion, as a public good, not for profit, because it will have to be subsidized. And I think Caribbean governments will have to accept that, listen, we'll have a line item in our budget to support regional travel and regional integration that it brings, and frankly, regional expansion, bringing our economy closer together. I go back to the comment I made: the Caribbean Sea should unite us, not divide us.
Not divide us. Premier, thank you so much for joining our program this evening. It was such a pleasure to have you. And based on the feedback from the comments, the audience thoroughly enjoyed your perspective this evening. I look forward to visiting you in Nevis soon, but we'll definitely be in touch with that. So thank you so much again, and all the best.
Thank you for having me, and good night to you and to all your viewers.
Thank you very much.
All right,
All right.
cheers.
And that was the Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, with some really engaging thoughts or comments that I think would be thought provoking for those of us who are listening. And it's interesting that we ended on the issue of regional travel, and he mentioned something. If you remember Vincentians, something that Dr. Gonzalez always said regarding Liat. You remember how much criticism Dr. Gonzalez got for his supporting of Liat? And here you have the Premier of Nevis saying to us right here that he believes that regional transportation has to be a public good. It can't be for profit. But they criticized Dr. Gonzalez when he said that many, many years ago. Anyway, we went about 10 minutes over and you stayed around. So thank you so much for being a part of tonight's program and for making it a successful one. I really enjoyed having the Premier, engaging with the Premier, and I enjoyed having you guys here for the entire program as well. Don't forget to continue to subscribe, to encourage individuals to subscribe to the program, encourage individuals to engage, activate their membership to the program. All right, membership is important. And again, big up Coach Mason, the very first in the post, the very first viewer of Uplift with Sehon Marshall to activate his membership. We have two tiers of membership. The first tier, it's $3 per month. The second tier is $7 per month, and this is specifically for those in the diaspora because many of our Caribbean countries that is not available. So if you're in St. Vincent, for example, and you look at the YouTube channel, you wouldn't see the membership button because it's not activated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Other countries may have it, I'm not sure, but at least for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is not. All right? But those of you in the UK, those of you in the US, those of you in Canada and so forth, those of you in Oman, Jordan, and other places, Germany, South Africa, Australia, where I saw some people logging on. I saw the statistics suggesting that people are logging on from those areas. You can definitely activate your membership and be a member of Uplift with Sehon Marshall. Finally, there will be a special program next week, Tuesday. A special program next week, Tuesday. addressing the issue and the challenges and the hostilities regarding Cuba, the Cuban people, with the United States government. All right, that's next Tuesday. We should have with us the ambassador of the Republic of Cuba to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, his ambassador Carlos, I can't pronounce his full name, and also have the ambassador of Cuba to Sweden, my good friend Raul Delgado. So that's next week's Tuesday. Now, I don't think it's going to be at 9 p.m., and here's why. Because my guest from Sweden, who is 5 hours ahead of us, would have to be up until 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, from 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's not practical. So I'm considering whether or not I should record it earlier in the day and then premiere it at 9, or whether I should do it as a live at around maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You could give me some feedback on that and let me know what your thoughts. But next Tuesday, a special edition of Uplift with Sehon Marshall featuring two ambassadors from Cuba, the Cuban ambassador to St. Vincent and Grenadines and the Cuban ambassador to Sweden. Until then, let me thank you again so much for tuning in and wish you a fantastic evening. Good night.